As we continue talking about the 19th century, we're going to focus once again on industrialism. We're looking at how the Industrial Revolution really changed the way things were made. And while we saw the factors that led to that revolution and some of its pros and cons, some of its positives and negatives, this time we're really going to see some different viewpoints on what this industrialism does to society and maybe how it should be entertained. All right, so the first way of looking at, the first set of ideas that we're going to look at is that of capitalism. Capitalism is going to take shape under Adam Smith's guidance in the book Wealth of Nations. He writes it in 1776. But we have to understand that the concept is really already on the planet, as people really for centuries have been interacting in open markets of trade with the buyer and the seller, determining what would be those stipulations of trade. Adam Smith's way of promoting it, though, is very much an Enlightenment way of expressing. He's going to have some rules. He's going to have some foundations to abide by, very much like all the other Enlightenment thinkers had about the way government should be structured. So he's going to say no government control in the economy. Economic decisions should have freedom from government interaction. He uses the term laissez-faire, which really means hands-off. He is going to say that competition is going to force people to make the best product available, and that really should be the guiding principle to all economic decision making. That, along with the laws of supply and demand. Supply, the decision by the producer, and demand, the decision by the consumer to act at a certain price. So they will meet together at the market to determine, again, what is the exchange, what are the stipulations of exchange. Smith's ideas are going to be supported by results. He feels, as well as other thinkers during the era who said that government interaction to really help the poor and needy would reduce profits and really undermine the motives of this system. Okay. Contrary to that is going to be some different ideas on how governments can interact with economic decisions to bring beneficial results. We often use the word socialism. This is contrary to capitalistic free approach. Okay. This suggests that government should intervene to be a protector. And there's some different views on this. First of all, we are introduced to utilitarianism. This is where people will judge ideas, institutions, actions on utility. That's another word for usefulness. So the decisions that you make need to be useful for your system. The goal should be the greater good, and the government's policy should be used to support this. The view here is that the economy can interact and that people should be free unless they're making decisions that are bad for the society. So again, it's for the greater good. This becomes a platform for reform movements also to improve conditions for groups like the poor, equal rights for people who are being mistreated, as well as the legal and prison systems of societies. Then you have utopianism. This takes on a more active approach by governments. People here in communities that will live and work together collectively will bring the best results for all. So this is kind of a perfect system where everybody's going to see the benefit for their decisions and make those decisions collectively. Then there's true socialism, or what I'm going to call true socialism. This is where the factors of production are owned and operated by the government for, again, the benefit of all. This will center around the humanistic approach, belief in progress, and of course social justice, being all factors as why the government should be empowered with this. The government should plan the economy by controlling key industries, things like the railroad industry, things like communication networks, the infrastructures of the communities will all be controlled by the government. Many, though, will see socialism's benefit best being promoted through democracy. So people voting to have this happen, not necessarily being forced upon them. Then you have some extreme or radical socialism. Karl Marx will be the author of the most, I would say, famous or the most recognizable of these theories, and is often called Marxism, or as he used the word, communism. This will advocate a radical form of socialism again. It will see society with classes. Of course, the middle class, these are the haves. These are the owners of the business, the bourgeoisie. Then there would be the lower class, the have-nots, the proletariat as he would call them. These are the workers. He will see that society has always been a conflict of haves versus have-nots, and that the Industrial Revolution has actually impoverished the poor and made the wealthy even richer. Marx and his good friend Frederick Engels will say that capitalism will destroy itself eventually, as wealth will increasingly transition to a few haves, so the number of haves would shrink, but their wealth would grow, and that there would be many, many more have-nots. This extreme socialism needed and can only be achieved by mass revolutions by the proletariat. So he's basically saying you had to overthrow the capitalists, overthrow the government even if it's supporting capitalism, and that a central planner or a government would be necessary to initially make decisions, but the factors of production are actually owned by everybody. Marx would argue that eventually this central planner would go away, but initially it would have to be empowered very, very strongly in order to force this better decision making on the people. When communism actually tries itself out in the 20th century, I think we recognize that most of the time the government never really goes away, and so the communism that the Soviet Union and other nations tried and experimented with really never probably looked much like what Marx was envisioning. So the society, according to Marx, would eventually become flat. There would be classless society. The Industrial Revolution is going to bring an opportunity to fix many of the problems that are not only in society but were also being created by it. It says workers began recognizing the power of their numbers and how they could improve conditions by staying united. Thus the idea of labor unions was born. The differences among workers, though, over rights as well as being skilled or unskilled workers sometimes would create difficulties in the process. So even the workers themselves sometimes had a hard time getting together on the best course of action or who should benefit. Goals of better conditions, job security, better pay, shorter hours, collective bargaining all became common themes for these unions. And they would use things like boycotts, strikes, slowdowns, and sit-ins to try to achieve their goals. They were basically costing the business owners money until the business owners would come and negotiate with them. The Industrial Revolution also brought emphasis to the ills of society. As people worked to solve the issues of the Industrial Revolution, they looked at reforming other areas of the society. Abolition of slavery and the promotion of women's rights were primary among those. Public education, prison, and mental health reform would also see an emphasis during this time in many societies around the world. Despite its ills, the Industrial Revolution introduced the world to a number of new inventions and innovations. Thomas Edison, most notable for the light bulb, but many other inventions that definitely aided people's lives. Bell with the telephone and Marconi with the radio, along with the Wright brothers and the airplane and the automobile. All of these really would have their heyday in the 20th century, but their inventions and their initial introductions would all be in this 19th century. So as new ideas of science would continue to challenge old ideas, improvements will be made, but not without conflict. Thanks.